I've come to sort of understand these tryptamines, especially these short-acting tryptamines. Why are they acting so shortly? Because they get metabolized very quickly and out of your system. So DMT and various relative slight changes in the molecular configuration have different effects. And there's one particular variation that I think is actually more interesting than the DMT core molecule in itself, in the sense that it's more potent for one thing. So the effective dose is like one tenth, or of the effective dose of that, and it's structurally related to serotonin, as they all are, and serotonin is such a key, interesting neurotransmitter. I've come to think of it as the neurotransmitter of emotional intelligence or emotional balance, because it makes depressed people who are deficient in serotonin less depressed, and it makes angry, irritable people who are also deficient in serotonin less angry and irritable. It kind of chills them out, and people that are down and depressed, it lifts them up. So it kind of goes from the extremes to the balance place. Now, there is a syndrome of having too much serotonin, but it's relatively rare. The much more common condition is deficiency of serotonin. 40% of the American population is depressed, right? And could benefit. And people have done all these studies on delinquent people and irritability. And I've used with 5-HTP, which is an immediate serotonin precursor. And and what Dennis McKenna once pointed out to me when I was actually, we were traveling with him, and he had not tried melatonin, and I asked him to try melatonin, which is very similar to this tryptamine relative and to serotonin, and there's a DMT relative, and with just a little couple of molecules added on a side chain, and what he said is that this tryptamine DMT relative is like pulls you into superconsciousness, and the melatonin, very similar with slight molecular change, pulls you into unconsciousness, sleep. Puts you. It's a sleep hormone that puts you into deep stage 3-4 sleep, which is very beneficent. But now people think melatonin is anti-aging medicine because it kind of puts you into stage 3-4 sleep, which is very, very healing. All your deep internal systems are being balancing out. So I thought that was very interesting, how just a little key, slight difference in the molecular configuration. And I think of these short-acting tryptamines producing a kind of a cascading effect through triggering the pineal pituitary hypothalamic axis, then triggering all these brain centers. So all the brain centers get involved: the emotional, the mental, the perceptual, and the connections between them. And anyway, I think that's some really interesting things worth pursuing there. And actually, I wanted to mention too the work of there's this book that's been written called The Second Brain, about the enteric brain.
Not quite sure.
I can give you the name of that too, where they've gone back to earlier research that was done in the 30s and 40s, where they used to say that in the 30s and 40s they got into the autonomic nervous system, has these two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, but actually originally they said they were the third. There was the enteric brain. They call it the enteric brain. There's 100 million neurons in the gut, 100 million nerve cells in the gut, in the lining and around the outside of lining of the gut. That is independent of the brain, basically, of the head and the brain. The only connection between the head brain and the gut is the vagus nerve, which has a couple of thousand fibers, not that much, compared to 100 million neurons. It's like the gut has its own brain, and it's clearly an older brain. And the neurotransmitter is, guess, serotonin.
Yeah, and ayahuasca then works through that.
That might explain. I don't know how to prove this, but it might explain why, people have this experience of throwing up, and which is a gut reaction, and then thinking more clearly, or seeing more clearly, literally seeing colors brighter, or suddenly thoughts clearer. How is that possible? Well, if it's serotonin, see, and So I think it's a fascinating area to pursue, that the interface between the nervous systems, the different levels of the nervous systems, and the hormonal, neuroendocrine kind of connections with these substances, because they metabolize so quickly. It's like I don't know what it's like. I mean, it's definitely a kind of a toxin, you see. So the body defends itself very quickly against it. But what it does, so it clears it out. It's sort of a clearing.
Yeah.